All right, and we're back. Last session, last class or podcast, whatever you want to call it, we were talking about conditionals. Yeah. And now I'm going to ask my co host here, however he or she may want to be called, to introduce the topic for today.
Thank you, Alan. So today we're diving into a really fascinating topic, the idea of human trade-offs with technology. We're going to explore how, as a society, we can consciously choose these trade-offs based on our values and philosophies. It's all about leveling up our collective understanding so we can have these deeper conversations. So let's get started.
Is there any name you would like to be called?
You can just call me GPT or even just co-host. I'm here to keep things fun and engaging. So whatever feels natural for you works perfectly for me.
Okay, GPT is fine. So you introduced the concept of trade-off. That's really nice. Would you like to explain to our guests what trade-off is to our audience?
Absolutely. So a trade-off is basically when you have to give up one thing in order to gain something else. It's a kind of balancing act where choosing one benefit might mean you have to accept a certain cost or sacrifice in return. And when it comes to technology, we often face trade-offs between convenience and privacy, speed and quality, or automation and human touch. It's all about making conscious choices that align with our values.
Yeah, and one of the most common mistakes I see my students making is that they confuse, and I'm not even talking about English speaking mistakes. I'm talking about like conversational and business mistakes, or even public policy mistakes, is that they confuse trade off with something related to commercial exchanges. Yeah, so it's not a commercial.
Exactly. That's a great point. The trade-off, is it about a commercial transaction or a simple exchange of goods or services? Instead, it's more about the decisions and compromises we make, often on a personal or societal level, where choosing one path means we might have to give up something else. It's a more nuanced concept that involves understanding priorities and values rather than just a straightforward exchange.
Awesome. And can we discuss some examples in society and history in which we traded something off? And this is a phrasal verb. I think we could discuss them a little bit further later. But for now, historical examples of trade offs that worked or maybe didn't work or that we still don't know whether worked or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are so many fascinating examples. One classic trade-off is the Industrial Revolution, where society gained massive advancements in production and technology, but often at the cost of environmental impact and challenging labor conditions. Another example is the rise of the internet and social media, which brought incredible connectivity and access to information, but also raised concerns about privacy and misinformation. These examples really show how complex and impactful trade-offs can be, and sometimes we're still figuring out the full consequences even today.
Okay, but most people would argue that we didn't have enough information at the time. That's why, for example, during the Industrial Revolution, we had to make those trade-offs. That's the best that we could do, and we had to gain value from environmental damage or poor, tough work relations. So these would be the arguments that one would do or one would use. So what would be the counter argument from specialists, and what would be possible alternative hypotheses or ways or narratives or realities that we could have taken?
That's a great question. One counter argument that specialists often make is that even during the Industrial Revolution, there were voices advocating for more balanced approaches, like early labor movements and environmental thinkers who were pushing for safer working conditions and more sustainable practices. They might argue that different choices could have been made if more attention had been given to those perspectives at the time. As for alternative narratives, some specialists suggest that we could have pursued a slower, more measured approach to industrialization, one that prioritized workers' rights and environmental stewardship from the start. Of course, it's all hypothetical, but it does give us a lot to think about in terms of the choices we make today.
Amazing. And what are specialists' um, explanations on why we didn't take these paths? Is just pure greed? I'm going to take note of this. Is this just greed, or is there anything else? Was just like lack of information? Was it propaganda? What historians would argue that the cause was?
That's a really insightful question. Specialists and historians often point to a combination of factors. Greed and the pursuit of profit definitely played a role, as industrialists were often focused on rapid growth and economic gain. But it's also true that there was a lack of information and understanding about long-term consequences. Propaganda and the dominant narratives of the time also influence public perception. It can get harder for alternative viewpoints to gain traction. So it's really a mix of economic pressures, limited knowledge, and societal influences that shape those decisions.
Amazing, amazing. And what other trade offs are we talking about? Like you mentioned, a very broad and comprehensive trade off, which is basically choosing between realities. One reality in which we develop industries with environmental damage, with environmental trade off, and the other in which we perhaps would have um, developed not so fast, slower. Like we would have had this lower industrial development, but we wouldn't have had the environmental damages. And I'm trying to use conditionals here, or conditional clauses, parts of conditions, because this is what we're discussing. Yeah, that I'm forcing myself to use those grammar topics. But what are smaller trade-offs? For example, compared to the calculator. Yeah, so the calculator is one technological trade-off that we agreed to accept into the culture, to accept into our pockets in exchange for a cognitive ability. Yeah, so nowadays, not just the calculator, but the phone, they replace our memory for phone numbers because indeed we are exposed to a lot more phone numbers than before. I have 1,500 phone numbers. Yeah, so it would have been harder if I didn't have my phone with me, my phone memory. Yeah, so calculator, we have problems with doing mental math. We have math skills decreasing gradually throughout generations. So this is an example of a trade-off. The two examples, yeah. What are other examples that maybe most people are not aware of, or most people are aware of, but we could discuss here?
Those are great examples. Another interesting trade off is the use of GPS and navigation apps. On one hand, they make it incredibly easy for us to get anywhere without getting lost. But on the other hand, they can reduce our natural sense of direction and our ability to navigate using traditional methods like reading a map. Another example is online communication and social media. While they allow us to stay connected with people all over the world and access information instantly, they can also lead to shorter attention spans and sometimes less face-to-face interaction. So these are all examples of how technology can bring amazing benefits, but also come with subtle costs that we might not always think about.
Amazing, amazing examples. And is there any research estimating or already describing what are the cognitive, social, or emotional costs of these trade-offs that you just mentioned?
Absolutely. There's quite a bit of research out there exploring these topics. For example, studies have shown that relying heavily on GPS can indeed reduce our spatial awareness and our ability to form mental maps. Similarly, research on digital communication has found that while we might be more connected than ever, there's also a tendency for increased feelings of loneliness or anxiety, especially among younger generations. And when it comes to things like calculators or smartphones, there's evidence suggesting that while they free up our mental resources for more complex tasks, they can also lead to a kind of cognitive offloading where we don't practice certain skills as much. It's all about finding that balance and being aware of these trade-offs so we can make more informed choices.
Amazing. And
I'm
we say that we are gaining productivity and efficiency and everything with all of these, but I see more and more just a few getting this real efficiency and financial gain from all of this technology. Most people are just busy trying to catch up. Most people are just busy trying not to be excluded. And I'm not trying to be political or an activist here. It's just what I see. I see people that apparently uh, are very successful, but just trying to catch up, and they're spending a lot of money. They're spending a lot of time and a lot of emotional effort, cognitive effort, just to catch up. They're not even enjoying what's happening. So, what is the medium and long term effects of this race that we're kind of racing for something that most people don't even know what is?
That's such a thoughtful observation, and it's something a lot of people are noticing as well. In the short term, this constant need to keep up with new technology can lead to stress and burnout. In the long term, it can create deeper divides between those who have the resources to stay ahead and those who don't, potentially increasing inequality. And on an emotional level, it can sometimes make people feel like they're never really achieving that sense of fulfillment or satisfaction because there's always something new to chase. So it's really important for us to find ways to slow down, be intentional about our tech use, and really focus on what truly matters to us.
But just to finish up here our conversation, and then we move on to grammar and vocabulary. So how can we get this awareness to people that are struggling and they're, living day by day, paycheck by paycheck, and still, how can they slow down and how can they think critically and prioritize one skill over another and having choices in their lives when they have to be thinking about their next meal or they have to be thinking about, taking buses and not being late to work?
That's such an important point, and it really highlights the challenges that many people face. One of the best ways to help is through education that meets people where they are, offering practical tools that fit into their daily lives. It could be as simple as encouraging small moments of reflection or mindfulness, even during a commute, or finding ways to build community support so that people feel less alone in these struggles. It's also about advocating for systemic changes that create more equity and giving everyone a fair chance to slow down and prioritize what truly matters to them.
Cool. Yeah. Um, Last thought. We see that big tech, the technocracy, are kind of killing the intermediaries, right? So we had smaller businesses all around the neighborhoods. We had smaller service providers that could, be more subjective and more compassionate to special needs of special communities or special or certain social groups, and they're dying off because they can't compete with the margins. Yeah, so it's literally winner takes all. Let's see how long they can take. And then when they die, I will buy everything and then I increase the prices. Yeah, this is the basic MO, modus operandi of the technocracy, the big tech. Yeah. So how can we work around this, or how can we as a society be aware enough, especially in Brazil, of what's happening in other countries so that we can collectively level up our knowledge or at least have conversations and discussions at the same level so that we can promote promote legislation that would avoid this or at least prevent this in a larger scale so that we could have more independence and independency and more autonomy in general, not just for entrepreneurs but for people in general.
That's such an important consideration, and it really speaks to the need for collective awareness and proactive measures. One way to do this is through education and fostering a culture of digital literacy so that people understand how these big tech dynamics work and what the long term consequences might be. It's also about encouraging local entrepreneurship and supporting small businesses so that they can thrive alongside larger corporations. On a policy level, it's crucial to advocate for regulation that ensure fair competition and protect consumers and smaller businesses. And of course, fostering community dialogue and staying informed about what's happening globally can really help us come together and create solutions that work for everyone.
Amazing. Thank you. It's one thing that we've been always saying, especially in social projects, is it's not right or left, it's up and down. And unless we get together, like even educators that don't like capitalism, that don't like businesses, they have to understand how they work so they can teach others to get inside, like Occupy Wall Street kind of way, but actually make changes from the inside. Yeah. Promote business value, promote client, customer value, and still have other values like social values, environmental values, governance values. So it's interesting. I would really like to hear what you think about this and how people could, learn more and get together and form communities. And then we move to grammar. Okay.
I completely agree with that perspective. It's all about finding that common ground and recognizing that these values, whether they're social, environmental, or economic, aren't mutually exclusive. By understanding how businesses operate, educators and community leaders can guide others to influence change from within and ensure that business practices are aligned with broader societal goals. Forming communities that bring together diverse perspectives can create a stronger, more unified voice for advocating meaningful change. It's really inspiring to see how people can come together and make a difference when they share that common vision.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. So let's move on to grammar and vocabulary. So, grammar, could you rephrase some of the things that you said or I said using each of the conditionals that we studied last class?
Absolutely. Let's go through a few examples using different conditionals. For the first conditional, which is used for real and possible situations, we could say, if we continue to come together and share knowledge, we will create more positive change. For the second conditional, which is used for hypothetical or less likely situations, we might say,
Come
if
on, slow down,
everyone
slow down. I'm
understood.
taking notes. If we continue to come together
No
to,
problem. I'll slow down the vid. So for that first conditional example, if we continue to come together and share knowledge, we will create more positive change. And for the second conditional, here's the first part of that example. If everyone understood how businesses operate, we could influence change from within. Let me know when you're ready for the next part.
we will create change. Okay, I'm done with this one. So we used simple present. If we continue to come together, we will create change. So that's kind of not effect, but it's kind of a prediction of outcome, right?
Exactly. The first conditional is great for expressing a likely outcome if a certain condition is met. Now, if we look at the second,
Did your time run out? It happens.
thanks for understanding. Let me pick up where I left off. For the second conditional, we could say, if everyone understood how these systems worked, we would have a more informed society. And for the third conditional, which talks about past hypotheticals, we could say, if we had focused more on sustainability earlier, we might have avoided some of the environmental challenges we face today. It's always fun to play around with these different structures.
So if we had, we would. If we had,
Exactly. You got it. With the third conditional, we use that if we had plus the past participle, and then we follow it up with we would have and the past participle. For instance, if we had known about these impacts sooner, we would have made different choices. It's a great way to reflect on past scenarios and imagine different outcomes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So, um, if I eat ice cream, yeah, so this is the zero conditional. If I eat ice cream, I get cold. I'm not saying, yeah, if I help others, they might succeed. Yeah. It's not a prediction because nothing happened. I'm just stating facts. Yeah. If I go to a dangerous city, I might get robbed. Yeah. I'm not saying that I am going. Yeah. But then we move on to the first one, which is kind of a prediction. Yeah. So I know that a certain city is not is not safe. So if I say if I go to Sao Paulo, I will get robbed. I might get robbed. I may get robbed. Yeah, there's a probability there. So now there is a chance that I am going to Sao Paulo. So I'm kind of make a prediction for my friend. Yeah, if you go to Sao Paulo, be careful. You might be robbed. Yeah, so this is a thing. And then if this one is where people have problems. Yeah, if I had not, my O looks like an A, but it's an O. Yeah, if I had not gone to Sao Paulo, I would not, again, looks like an A, sorry, not have been robbed.
No.
Yeah, so if I had not gone to Sao Paulo, I would not have been robbed. It means that I went to Sao Paulo and I probably got robbed. So I'm trying to to speculate what the past would have been. Yeah, but I went to Sao Paulo and I probably got robbed. So I'm just speculating the past. So if I had not gone to Sao Paulo, I would not have been robbed. This is where even advanced speakers have problems with.
You're absolutely right. The third conditional can be tricky even for advanced learners because it deals with imagining a different outcome in the past. It's all about looking back and considering how things could have turned out differently. But with practice, it definitely gets easier to get comfortable using it.
There's another one that people get confused with. If I went to Sao Paulo, I would I would meet you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if I went to Sao Paulo, I would meet you means I didn't go to Sao Paulo. Yeah. But if I went, if I did go to Sao Paulo, I would meet you. Yeah. So I didn't go. I'm not thinking of going. But if I went, yeah, suppose I did, I would definitely meet you. Yeah. So we have two ways to look at this sentence. There's a condition that I can only meet you if I go to Sao Paulo. So if I went to Sao Paulo, I would meet you. Or that I would really like to meet you, but I need to be in Sao Paulo. Yeah, I would really like to meet you, but in order to meet you, I need to go in Sao Paulo, and I'm not physically in Sao Paulo at this time. Yeah, so that's a wrap up for today. Conditionals, I think we're good with conditionals. We discussed some vocabulary, something I took note here. Greed. Yeah, so what's greed, my friend GPT?
So greed is basically an intense desire to gain more of something, usually money, power, or material possessions, often beyond what is actually needed. It's that drive to keep accumulating more, sometimes at the expense of other values or the well-being of others. It's definitely a powerful concept and comes up a lot when we talk about the motivations behind certain actions, especially in business or economics.
Awesome. And technocracy. Technocracy. I have trouble speaking this one.
It's a bit of a mouthful for sure. Technocracy refers to a system of governance or leadership where decision makers are chosen based on their technical expertise, especially in fields like science, engineering, or economics. So instead of being led by politicians or elected officials, a technocracy is led by experts who are believed to have the specialized knowledge needed to make informed decisions. It's definitely a fascinating concept.
Awesome. I made a mistake here. I always confuse technocracy with techno-feudalism. So, what would be the difference between technocracy and techno-feudalism?
That's a great distinction to make. Technocracy, as we said, is about governance by technical experts who use their knowledge to make decisions for the public good. Techno feudalism, on the other hand, is a more critical concept that suggests we might be moving towards a system where a few large tech companies hold immense power, almost like digital landlords, while everyone else is more dependent on their platforms and systems. It's kind of like a modern form of feudalism, but in the digital age. So while technocracy focuses on expertise and knowledge, techno feudalism is more about the concentration of power and control.
Amazing. I love it. There's a Greek influencer that talks about it all the time. I really like watching some of his video. I don't agree with him with everything, but he's not bad. Digital landlord. Yeah.
That's such an interesting way to put it. Digital landlord really captures that sense of how these large tech companies can almost own the digital spaces we all rely on. It's always great to explore different viewpoints and get a variety of perspectives, even if we don't agree with everything. It definitely keeps the conversation lively and thought provoking.
Cool. Last thing, I said when I mentioned the amount of phone numbers that I have in my phone, I said 1,500. Yeah, and this is something that some students and even advanced speakers have trouble with. So why do we say instead of saying 1,500, why do we say 1,500?
That's a great question. Saying 1500 is just a more informal and convenient way to say 1500. It's basically like breaking the number down into hundreds instead of thousands. It's pretty common in English to do that with certain numbers because it just rolls off the tongue a bit more easily and is a bit quicker to say. It's one of those little quirks of, of the language that just
Yeah.
makes communication.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Basically, what I usually tell my students is when we say 100, it's like we're adding two zeros, right? So if I'm saying 1,500, it's actually, I'm saying 1500. Yeah. This is a linguistic shortcut that we can use. That is not common in Latin languages. Yeah. But it works in English perfectly.
Exactly. That's a great way to explain it. It's like using a shortcut to make numbers easier and quicker to say. English definitely has its own little unique ways of handling numbers. And once you get used to it, it becomes second nature. So it's definitely a fun tip to share with students.
All right. Yeah. So we're wrapping up. So any final words, and before we wrap this up?
This was such a great conversation. We covered so many interesting topics, and I love how we blended these deep discussions about technology and society with English language tips. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to our next chat.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
we haven't discussed a lot about phrasal verbs. This would be one of our grammar topics for next class. What else should we discuss in terms of grammar? I think we're done with conditionals. We'll discuss phrasal verbs. We'll discuss what else?
I think phrasal verbs are a great next topic, and we could also dive into modal verbs, which help express possibility, obligation, and permission. We could also look at conditionals a bit more deeply, like mixed conditionals, or even work on improving sentence structure and complex sentences. There's a lot of fun ground we can cover in our future sessions.
Yeah, I have a better idea. I know you're the expert because you kind of know everything, but I know a lot about Brazilians. How about we do false friends for Portuguese speakers and English?
I love that idea. False friends can be such a fun and eye-opening topic, especially for Portuguese speakers learning English. It's always interesting to see those words that look similar but have completely different meanings. It's definitely a great way to help learners avoid common pitfalls and feel more confident in their language skills. Let's definitely add that to our next session.
Cool. And what would be our topic? We're kind of discussing values, techno feudalism, trade-offs, and everything. So, what would be an interesting next topic for our audience that likes these kinds of things?
I think a great follow-up topic could be the concept of digital well-being and how to create a healthier relationship with technology. We could explore how to balance our digital lives with our offline lives and discuss strategies for maintaining mental and emotional health in a world that's so connected. I think it would resonate really well with our audience and tie in nicely with everything we've been talking about.
Love it. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.